With the nation still reeling from the 9/11 attacks, it was only a matter of days before George Bush struck the tone that defined his foreign policy.
There's an old poster out west, as I recall, that said, "Wanted, dead or alive."
That's because the White House was determined to overcome the impression that its reaction on the day itself was confused and uncertain. Even before the intelligence was in, the White House insisted Osama bin Laden was responsible. Yet almost immediately, the Bush administration began laying the groundwork for an approach that would go far beyond seeking retribution from just one man and his followers.
There are thousands of these terrorists in more than 60 countries. They are recruited from their own nations and neighborhoods and brought to camps in places like Afghanistan, where they are trained in the tactics of terror.
This set the stage to broaden the terms of conflict.
Our war on terror begins with Al-Qaeda, but it does not end there. It will not end until every terrorist group of global reach has been found, stopped, and defeated.
George Bush made absolutely clear this policy was now set in stone, saying the most important thing is for us to find Osama bin Laden. It is our #1 priority. Until he changed his mind, saying, listen, our objective is more than bin Laden. 1 month later, the vice president took an entirely new approach. Bin Laden himself isn't that big a threat. Possibly because the Secretary of State had no idea where he was. I have seen nothing that suggests we know where he is, whether it's Afghanistan, Pakistan, or somewhere else. A few weeks later, the head of the CIA appeared to disagree with his boss, testifying that bin Laden remained an immediate and serious threat. Not so fast, replied the president. I truly am not that concerned about him. Thankfully, by the beginning of April, the most senior military officer in the nation finally cleared things up. George Bush's top priority was not, in fact, a priority at all. The goal has never been to get bin Laden. The confusion over what to do with this man was clearly apparent at the very highest levels of the White House. To understand why, one school of thought suggests it was more politically expedient for George Bush to allow bin Laden to remain at large. Osama on the loose helped justify the Bush-Cheney agenda. Another explanation is that within weeks of the attacks, the White House was already thinking about new theaters of war. They could either devote forces to hunting down bin Laden or lay the foundations to send them somewhere else. And by March 2003, we learned where, as the invasion of Iraq got underway.
They are still a threat. They are still dangerous. And that is why it is important that we succeed in Afghanistan and Iraq and anywhere else we find them.
Naturally, this philosophy had its political benefits as well. It had to, in order for the full breadth of this foreign policy vision to be seen through. Had Osama been captured early on, there's no guarantee the American people would have continued to support such an all-encompassing foreign policy, which is why the concept of the war on terror only shifted after George Bush left office. Once Barack Obama became president, his administration deliberately abandoned the phrase, the new president bringing with him a new rhetoric.
To the Muslim world, we seek a new way forward based on mutual interest and mutual respect.
And that new rhetoric, in turn, revealing a shift in approach. What has changed in American foreign policy is the rationale. Barack Obama said so himself.
Shortly after taking office, I directed Leon Panetta, the director of the CIA, to make the killing or capture of bin Laden the top priority of our war against al-Qaeda.
Now that the American president has returned to specifics, he faces a new problem. If he's going to continue the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, it's up to him now to explain why.